One of the region's trailblazing equestrians is remembered on the signposts around here, George Cardinet Jr. He was a descendant of French immigrants who came to California during the gold rush. His father helped found the Cardinet Candy Company, where George Jr. also worked, but he's better known for what he accomplished on horseback. Starting in the 1940s, Cardinet mapped and routed more than 200 miles of trails in the East Bay region. He also helped refurbish trails that were burned in Mount Diablo's Great Fire of 1977, including the Falls Trail. But his vision extended far beyond the East Bay. He helped pass state and national laws promoting trails for hikers and equestrians, including the Pacific Crest and Appalachian Trails. He organized a reenactment of the Juan Bautista de Anza expedition, riding 900 miles on a trail from Mexico to the Bay Area for the nation's bicentennial. To the National Park Service, Cardinet was the grandfather of national trails. Ken remembers meeting him on the mountain in the 1990s.
He was a very nice man. He always gave equal credit to his horse.
George's nephew, Paul Cardinet, works as a volunteer in Mount Diablo State Park. I telephoned him to see what he had to say about his famous uncle.
He was born in Oakland, and his father had a ranch out in Clayton, which is the current city hall. So they used to go out there on weekends and summer times. But George always liked the West. He loved horses. And in the 30s, he moved out to Clayton on Pine Hollow Road, where he lived the rest of his life. And in those years, there were only ranchers out there, and he wanted to ride his horse, but the land was all locked up with fences. So he and a few others, I think, got together and started talking with the various ranchers to get easements so that they could pass through their properties in order to get up to Diablo or wherever they wanted to ride. So that was basically how he got started. They would ride horses and use machetes, and they would simply hack their way through the brush and started to establish trails, which is quite evident in the way the trails are formed because most of them are pretty much straight uphill. And, so if you're on a horse, it's not a problem. If you're a hiker, it's a different thing.
Cardinet was a leader in the Concord Mount Diablo Trail Ride Association. During 2 terms as president in the 1960s, he helped establish a clubhouse, pool, barn, and riding facilities on the slopes of Mount Diablo. Association members also named Mount Olympia.
People often wonder, well, how did it get its name? Well, when they would ride up to Mount Olympia using their machetes and stuff, they would store only Olympia beer for while they were working or after they're working. And that was the rumor of how it got its name. One of the last things he did, and a newspaper man from the Contra Costa Times wanted to do an article on him. And the newspaper guy rode horses, and so George says, well, if you ride, why don't we both take a ride and we'll talk.
So they rode up Mitchell Canyon to Murchio Gap and started down the trail into Back Canyon.
Well, he starts down the hill and he realizes that the trail's in really bad condition. It's really steep, so he gets off the horse. And as he's walking, leading the horse through, the horse slips, gives him a good whack with his nose and sends him flying. Well, George is in the brush, he's bleeding, and the newspaper man is like, oh my God, I've injured this poor guy. So he calls, and I think they helicoptered him out of there. But he was fine. They got him stitched up, and 2 days later, he was in Washington, D.C. lobbying for some trail project.
Paul Cardinet loves trails too, but he's a hiker, not an equestrian. In the 1990s, George asked him to help on an Earth Day project in the state park.
He got a hold of me and said, Paul, would you be willing to help me reestablish this old trail? Well, it was the Eagle Peak Trail. So I said, sure. We got there and got all these volunteers and got trail work going. And that was sort of the start of the Second Saturday Trail Group.
Paul has been digging and hauling and lifting with the state park's Second Saturday group ever since. He, Conrad Lowry, and Jerry Schweikert built stone steps to stabilize an eroding hillside in the grotto area near Rock City. And they've restored some of the park's crumbling Diablo stoves. When you hear Paul and his colleagues' long list of contributions, you know that George Cardinet's generous spirit lives on.
He was a leader for sure. He was very energetic, could be impatient at times if things dilly-dallied too much. You know, something needed to get fixed. He worked on it and got it done.
In segment 4, we'll hear a first-person account of the Great Fire of 1977.